What we're going to cover in this segment is basically the basic components that make up a generator set. We're going to go over from front to back everything that's on here so you get familiarized with what makes up a generator set. First off, we have the engine and generator that are on this unit. Basically, they're coupled together on a skid. The skid is mounted on these vibration isolators that are down here on the bottom here. This helps absorb the shock of the engine starting and stopping and while they're running. They basically run on these vibration isolators and keep the vibration in the building down. From there, we come up, we'll start on the back here. Basically, this is your generator end. This is the alternator that produces electricity for the community. From there, we move along. We've got your starter. Below the starter on this unit, we have our oil level indicator. It's got oil in here that moves up and down while the engine is running. Right next to it, there's a slave solenoid. This is actually the starter solenoid that engages the starter when we go to a crank cycle. We move over here. This is a typical sending unit that's on here. This one, for instance, is an oil temperature sender. These are common on the engine. They're usually oil temperature, water temperature, and oil pressure. They all have these type of sensors on them. Here's an oil level switch. Basically, as our oil level drops in our oil pan, this will drop down and shut the engine down to prevent it from seizing up if the oil level gets too low. We're going to move back up. Some systems have vent crank breathers on them. This has a filter in the bottom of it, and what it does is it takes the vent crank exhaust, filters out the oil out of it, drains it back into the pan, and injects the air back into the turbo to be burned up. Up here we've got the turbocharger. This is common. The exhaust manifolds here. We've got an air filter up here with a restrictor valve on it. You've got your flex. Then we're going to move around to the front of the engine. Basically, any moving parts should have guards over them. Some of these have belt-driven water pumps on them. This one has a gear-driven water pump. It sits right here on the front of the engine. As we move down, we come down to here. This is a coolant filter, basically, that has valves on it so you can isolate that and change that. Some of our systems also have basically fuel flow sensors on them. That's what this device over here is. These are not filters. They do not have to be changed. These are a one-time item. Once we put this system together and put these on it, you never have to mess with these filters. They never have to be changed. Okay, now we're going to go to the other side of the engine and look at that side of the engine to identify the items on it. Okay, on this side of the engine, basically what we have starting up here is we have a fuel filter for the engine. This is our filter that supplies fuel to the engine. On the back here, this is called a mag pickup. This basically counts the teeth of the revolution on the flywheel to tell it how fast the engine is actually running. Over here we have an actuator. This is part of the fuel system. This actually adjusts the throttle up and down to adjust the speed of the engine. There's a linkage arm on the back end of this that drives the fuel injection pump. This is the fuel injection pump that's over here. Below the fuel injection pump, we've got the oil dipstick. Basically, you screw it out so you can check your oil on your machine. Above it is our mechanical instrument gauge. On this fuel pump, there's a hand prime pump that's on here. If you ever lose prime on this engine, this is the pump that you use to pump prime back into the injection pump to restart the engine. We move down here to the front end of the skid, and basically for oil changes, we have the shutoff valves for doing the oil change on this system. There's actually two valves that are in conjunction with that. There's one at the front of the skid and one at the wall. We have our fuel valves. We have basically your standard shutoff valve for turning the fuel off. And then we have a Firomatic valve. This has a fusible link inside here that will actually, if in case of a fire, it'll melt that link and close that valve off. We've got our cooling system hoses basically that run back and forth to our engine. This is our return of the cold water back to the engine. On the high side here, we have our hot going out. If you notice, there's this orange blanket that's sitting on here. This is actually a protective blanket because we're so close to the exhaust system. The heat from the exhaust can dry out and crack this line, so we put this insulated blanket on there to protect it. The other component we have up here, we also have, this is called a bleed line. This bleeds air off the engine. This also is a circulation line that allows fluid to circulate through this engine so that when this engine is offline, it'll keep the engine preheated and ready to run at any point in time.